Hello everyone, welcome to A to Z Concepts History. Let's get started by our topic, which is on history of India. What can we know about the past? There are several things we can find out. What people ate, the kinds of clothes they wore, the houses in which they lived. We can find out about the lives of hunter, herders, farmers, rulers, merchant, priest, craftsperson, artist, musicians, and scientists. We can also find about the games children played at that time, the story they heard, the place they saw, the songs they sang. Where did people live? See, we have marked out with a yellow color on this map, and this river is known as Narmada. People have lived along the banks of this river for several 100,000 years. Some of the earliest people who lived here were called gatherers, that is, the people who gather their food. They knew about the vast wealth of plants in the surrounding forests and collected roots, fruits, and other forest produce for their food. They also hunted animals. We have marked with red color on this map. This region is known as Suleiman and Kirthar Hills on the northwest. Some of the areas where women and men first began to grow crops such as wheat and barley about 8,000 years ago are located here. People also began rearing animals like sheep, goat, and cattle and lived in villages. We have located the Garo Hills to the northeast and Vindhyas in the central India on this map. These were some of the other areas where agriculture developed. These places where rice was first grown are to the north of the Vindhyas. The red color which is shown on the map is the Indus rivers and its tributaries. Tributaries are small rivers that flowed into a larger river. About 4,700 years ago, some of the earliest cities flourished on the bank of these rivers. We have indicated the Ganga and its tributaries called the Son on this map. About 2,500 years ago, cities developed on the banks of the Ganga and its tributaries and along the sea coast. In ancient times, the area along these rivers to the south of the Ganga was known as Magad, now lying in the state of Bihar. Its rulers were very powerful and set up a large kingdom. Why do people travel? Throughout, the people travel from one part of the subcontinent to another. The hills and high mountains, including the Himalayas, deserts, rivers, and seas, made journeys dangerous at times, but never impossible. So, men and women moved in search of livelihood are also to escape from natural disasters like floods and droughts. Sometimes men marched in armies conquering others' land. Besides, merchants travels with caravans or ships, carrying valuable goods from place to place. And religious teachers walked from village to village, town to town, stopping to offer instruction and advice on the way. Finally, some people perhaps traveled driven by a spirit of adventure, wanting to discover new and exciting places. All these led to the sharing of ideas between people. Hills, mountains, and seas form the natural frontiers of the subcontinent, while it was difficult to cross these frontiers. Those who wanted could and did scale the mountain and cross the sea. People from across the frontiers also came into the subcontinent and settled here. These movement of the people enriched our culture traditions. People have shared their new ways of carving stone, composing music, and even cooking food over several hundred of years. How we get this land name India? Two of the words we often use for the country are India and Bharat. The word India comes from the Indus called Sindhu in Sanskrit. Find Iran and Greece in the map. The Iranians and the Greeks who came through the northwest about 2,500 years ago and were familiar with the Indus called it Hindos and the Indos, and the land to the east of the rivers was called India. The name Bharata was used for a group of people who lived in the northwest and who are mentioned in the Rig Vedas. The earliest composition in Sanskrit dated to about 3,500 years ago. Later, it was used for the country. How can we find about our past? There are several ways of finding about the past. One is to research for and read books that were written long ago. These are called manuscripts because they were written by hand. This comes from the Latin word manu, meaning hand. These were usually written on palm leaf or on the specifically prepared bark of the tree known as the birch, which grows in the Himalayas. Over the years, many manuscripts were eaten away by insects, some were destroyed, but many have survived, often preserved in temples and monasteries. These books deal with all kinds of subjects, religious beliefs and practices, the lives of kings, medicines and science. Besides, there were epics, some poems, plays. Many of these were written in Sanskrit, others were written in Prakrit language used for ordinary people and Tamil. We can also study inscriptions. These are written on relatively hard surface such as stone or metal. Sometimes kings got their orders inscribed so that the people could see, read and obey them. These are the other kinds of inscriptions as well, where men and women including kings and queens recorded what they did. For example, kings often record of victories in battle. This is an old inscription. This inscription dated to about 2250 years ago and was found in Kandahar, present day in Afghanistan. It was inscribed on the orders of a ruler named Asoka. This inscription was inscribed in two different scripts and languages, Greek and Aramaic. This is another old inscription, a pot from an old city used about 4700 years ago. An old silver coin, which is shown on the right of this screen, is used about 2500 years ago.
Is used.
Is there one past or many? Did you notice the title of this video, Our Past? We have used this word past in plural to draw attention to the fact that the past was different for different groups of people. For example, lives of herders or farmers were different from the lives of kings and queens. The life of merchant were different from the lives of craftsperson, and so on. Also, as is true even today, people follow different practices and customs in different parts of the country. For example, today most people living in the Andaman Islands get their own food by fishing, hunting and collecting forest produce. By contrast, most people living in the cities depend on others for supplies of food. Differences such as these existed in the past as well. Besides, there is another kind of difference. We know a great deal about kings and the battle they fought because they kept records of their victories. Generally, ordinary people such as hunters, fishing folk, gatherers, farmers or herders did not keep their records of what they did. What do dates mean? If somebody asks you the date, you will probably mention the day, month and year, 2000 and something. These years are counted from the dates generally assigned to the birth of Jesus Christ, the founder of Christianity. So 2000 dates mean 2000 years after the birth of Christ. All dates before the birth of Christ are counted backwards and usually have the letter BC, that is before Christ, added on. In this video, we will refer the dates going back from the present using 2000 as our starting point. Letters with date BC we have seen stand for before Christ. You will sometimes find AD before dates. This stands for two Latin words, Anno Domini meaning in the year of Lord, that is Christ. So 2020 can also be written as AD 2020. Sometimes C is used instead of AD and BC instead of BC. The letter C stand for Common Era and BC stands for Before Common Era. We use these terms because the Christian era is now used in most of the countries of the world. In India, we began using this form of dating from about 200 years ago, and sometimes the letters BP meaning before present are used. We have seen that inscriptions are inscribed on hard surfaces. Many of these were inscribed several hundred years ago. All inscriptions contains both scripts and languages. Languages which were used as well as scripts have changed over time. So how do scholars understand what was inscribed? This can be done through a process known as decipherment. One of the most famous stories of decipherment comes from Egypt, a country in North Africa where there were a king and queens about 5,000 years ago Rosetta is a town on the north coast of Egypt, and here an inscribed stone was found, which contained inscription in three different languages and scripts, Greek and two forms of Egyptian. Scholars who could read Greek figured out what the names of kings and queens were enclosed in a little frame called a katok. They then placed the Greek and the Egyptian signs side by side and identified the sound for which the Egyptian letter stood. As you can see, a lion stood for L and a bird for A. Once they knew what the letter stood for, they could read other inscription as well. If you like the way we provide knowledge, then please subscribe our channel for more videos.